What is the information you get from balancing a chemical equation? Okay, when you balance a chemical equation, what all things you can retrieve from that information? For that particular question, what are we going to write? This is the particular portion that we are going to attempt. These are the points that we can see from balancing an equation. A chemical equation gives information about reactants. They talk about the reactants and products, their symbols and formula. So when you are writing a chemical equation, yes, you will be writing reactants on the left hand side and the products. How do you write them in the formula? So this is our first point. The ratio of the molecules of the reactants and the products are present. What is the content that is present? Right, we were balancing the equation like H2 plus O2 gives H2O. What did we do? We made this as 2H2O and here as 2H2O. That means 2 portions of hydrogen for every 1 portion of oxygen. This ratio, it will be known when you are balancing the equation. So, ratio of the molecules in the reactants and the products also we will know. The third point talks about molecular masses. We will find out the mass of this molecule, okay, and the mass of the reactants molecule also we will be finding it out, right? And how are these masses expressed? They can be expressed in grams, they can expressed in unified masses. We already learned, like for example the water molecule, its mass is 18. You can either write it as unified mass or we can also write it as 18 grams, right? And we will know whether the gases are evolved or not, right? If there are gases, we will find out their volumes. We calculate the volume of the gas that is liberated, at what temperature, at what pressure it is liberated also we can calculate, right? So that will help. Using which, what are you going to do? Using the molar mass and molar volume relationship. So from a balanced equation, we can also find out Avogadro's number. We already learnt Avogadro's number in our earlier classes. In class 9th we have learnt. Apart from that, we can, so on the whole, if we have to summarize it, we can find out mass relationship. That means if you know the mass and the other mass of the reactants and the products, we can find it out. Mass volume relationship, same manner, you know mass of few elements or compounds in that particular chemical reaction, you can find volume, especially the volume of a gas. Volume relationship, or mass volume number of molecules. That means if a mass is given, you can find even a volume. You can even find Avogadro's number of substances that are present in that particular chemical equation. So when a question is asked, you have to write down. Interpreting a balanced equation means these are the points that you will be writing. 6 points you will be writing. How can you make a chemical equation more informative? We can add few symbols to make the equation more understandable. We have to know whether the obtained products are in which state, whether they will be in liquid state or whether they will be in a gaseous state or a precipitate form. What are the conditions that are needed to perform that particular experiment? So how can you have performed an experiment and we want to write it down on the paper that we have heated this particular experiment or only reaction has taken place. But when you have when we performed this particular experiment in the reactants, when both the reactants have reacted, the products obtained, one of the product is in a gaseous state or lot of heat is liberated. All that we can represent it without writing a paragraph in the form of an equation using symbols, right? So what all can be shown to make the information chemical equation more informative? You can add physical state, you can add whether heat changes is taking place. That means the equation is a liberating heat or absorbing heat, exothermic or endothermic. If a gas is evolved or a precipitate is evolved. How do you show if that is what the physical state of it? What can you do? Physical states, we have gaseous, liquid and solid, right? So for G for gases, L for liquid, S for solid, you can write down. And if it is in a solid form and you are adding a water to make it a solution, it will become an aqueous. So you can also write it down as aqueous. For example, one equation which we have already learnt, iron oxide plus aluminium gives iron plus aluminium trioxide. Here iron oxide is in a solid state. So what did we put down as a subscript S as a to the compound we have written. It tells that it is in a solid state. So for both of these reaction, burning, so it is taking place in the presence of heating. So we are showing arrow mark, the conditions to perform this particular experiment, we are writing it on an arrow mark. So here this particular triangle says that it is getting heated up. Heat changes. How do we change? How do we show whether there is lot of heat produced? For that, what do? We put plus Q. Plus Q tells that the heat is liberated. Minus Q, when we write it as minus Q, that means heat is absorbed. It is an endothermic reaction. These two examples are very important for us to know as a supporting examples to write in the examination for exothermic and endothermic. You can write any other reaction, but if we want to remember it easily, these are the two equations that you can remember and write down. Carbon and oxygen, when this both carbon and oxygen, see here, oxygen, it is in a gaseous state. So we have understood that by writing this particular annotation here. G tells that it is in a gaseous state. What is the product obtained? It is carbon dioxide. How is it obtained? It is also in the gaseous state. Now, what is happening along with this? Lot of heat is produced. How are we writing it as? By showing plus Q. That means it is exothermic. Heat is liberated out. If it is an endothermic, if heat is being absorbed, we write it as minus Q. That means heat is not released here. Nitrogen plus oxygen, both are in which state? They are in gaseous state. They give out nitrogen oxide, which is in a gaseous state, and this will absorb energy. It won't release any heat. So plus or minus will tell whether the heat is released or absorbed. The third point, it is telling that particular gas is evolved. For example, zinc is reacting with sulfuric acid. So zinc here is in solid state and sulfuric acid is aqueous. That means it's a diluted one. We made it with a distilled one, right? And it is giving zinc sulfate plus hydrogen gas. So how do we show this hydrogen gas? We will put an upward arrow here. Upward arrow tells that the gas is liberated in this particular reaction, or gas is evolved in a reaction. Now, if a precipitate is formed, that precipitate, how do we show? With a downward arrow. That means that will get settled down. It is denoted by downward arrow. So these are the conditions that will help us to know whether in an equation, in a particular chemical reaction, what are the conditions that we can expect when we are doing the experiment. So there is a difference between interpreting a balanced equation and making a equation informative. Informative means we are adding few things so that the other person, whoever is reading, will understand. Interpreting means what? We get to know these information from the already balanced equation. For example, see here. Now how can I interpret? So two portions of aluminium chloride, when I put it in the sunlight, I get two portions of silver chloride. Two portions of silver chloride, when I put it in a sunlight, I get two portions of silver and one portion of chlorine, right? Now chlorine is in a gaseous, that means it will escape out. So either you collect it in a cylinder, those are the other conditions, we will look it out, but these are the things that can be obtained. One will be in a solid form and one will be in the gaseous form. So these are the interpretations that we can get. And what are the mass of this particular silver chloride that we can use to obtain a certain mass of silver and chlorine? That information we get it from interpreting the already balanced equation. Information that you get from making it more informative is writing the conditions, whether it is an aqueous, solid or liquid or gaseous or precipitate is formed. That all will tell us by when we are making chemical equation informative. So we add a few things. Interpreting is we get to know few things from the balanced equation. Hope this is clear.